The pre-dawn quiet of Viridian City, a sprawling metropolis that never truly slept, was a world familiar only to a select few. Among them was Elena Rodriguez, a sanitation worker in her late 30s, whose internal clock stirred her long before the first rays of sun kissed the city's towering skyscrapers. She moved with a quiet efficiency, her movements practiced and precise, a silent dancer in the symphony of the city's awakening. Her uniform, a practical ensemble of sturdy green and reflective stripes, was always impeccably clean, a testament to her meticulous nature, despite the inherently grimy nature of her work. She wasn't merely a garbage collector, she was an observer, a silent sentinel who witnessed the hidden pulse of the city, its discarded secrets, and its untold stories. Her daily routine began long before most of Viridian City even dreamt of coffee. The hum of her garbage truck, a low, mechanical growl, was a familiar companion as she navigated the labyrinthine alleys and bustling avenues. The familiar stench of refuse, a complex blend of stale food, chemical cleaners, and indefinable urban decay, was less an assault on her senses and more a familiar perfume, a nuanced indicator of the city's various lives. With a rhythmic clang of bins and the powerful hydraulic hiss of the truck's compactor, Elena moved through her designated route, her eyes keenly observing everything. She saw the discarded remnants of last night's celebrations, the crumpled dreams of failed businesses, the quiet despair of neglected homes. But more than that, she noticed patterns, anomalies, the subtle shifts in the city's waste that told a story few bothered to read. A sudden proliferation of a particular type of packaging in a wealthy district, an unusual amount of discarded furniture in a working-class neighborhood. These were the quiet clues she deciphered. Elena was, by nature, a solitary figure. Her lunch breaks were often spent alone in the cab of her truck, a simple sandwich in hand, her gaze sweeping over the urban landscape. She watched the hurried commuters, the strolling tourists, the homeless figures huddled in doorways. She observed the subtle dance of human interaction, the fleeting expressions on faces, the unspoken narratives woven into the city's daily rhythm. She was an invisible part of the city's machinery, vital yet unseen, allowing her an unparalleled vantage point into its true character. This quiet competence, this dedication to her often thankless job, was a hallmark of her character. She found a quiet dignity in her work, a sense of purpose in maintaining the unseen order of the sprawling metropolis. One particularly blustery Tuesday morning, as she navigated the narrow, winding streets of a particularly impoverished district known as the Lower Docks, a place where the concrete met the grimy waters of the harbor, Elena spotted an elderly woman struggling. The woman, frail and stooped, was attempting to drag a heavy, overflowing recycling bin to the curb. Her small frame trembled with the effort, and a gust of wind nearly sent the bin tumbling. Without a moment's hesitation, Elena stopped her massive truck, its air brakes hissing loudly. She dismounted, her boots thudding softly on the pavement, and walked towards the woman. The woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and embarrassment. Elena offered a warm, reassuring smile. "Here, let me help you with that, ma'am," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. With surprising strength, she effortlessly maneuvered the heavy bin to the curb, positioning it perfectly for collection. "Is there anything else you need?" she asked, her gaze genuinely concerned. The woman, tears welling in her eyes, simply shook her head and whispered a heartfelt, "Thank you, dear." Elena gave a small nod, a quiet acknowledgement of a shared moment of human connection, before returning to her truck. She drove off, leaving the grateful woman behind, having performed a small act of kindness that would likely go unnoticed by anyone else. This quiet, selfless act, putting the needs of a vulnerable citizen before the rigid schedule of her route, was Elena's silent declaration of character, a profound act of saving the cat. It ensured that any reader would instinctively root for her, drawn to her inherent goodness and quiet dignity. Beyond her daily observations of human habits, Elena had an almost uncanny knack for spotting unusual details in the refuse itself. For the past few months, she had noticed a subtle shift, a barely perceptible anomaly in the city's discarded things. It began with a few peculiar items, an odd, almost organic residue clinging to the inside of a discarded plastic container, its color a sickly, unusual greenish-brown, or strange, almost crystalline markings on the inner lining of what appeared to be standard medical waste packaging from a clinic in a less affluent neighborhood. Then came the unusual proliferation of specific types of discarded animal bones, not the usual chicken or beef, but smaller, more intricate fragments, mixed with strange, almost industrial-looking synthetic materials in bins that should have only contained household trash. She even noted odd colorations in stagnant water near overflowing dumpsters in neglected industrial zones, a shimmering, almost oily film that dispersed in strange, unsettling patterns. These were unlike anything she'd seen in her 20 years on the job, and her intuition, a quiet hum beneath the surface of her pragmatic mind, told her they were significant. She kept a small, worn, leather-bound notebook in the glove compartment of her truck, its pages filled with her neat, precise handwriting. It wasn't a diary, it was a chronicle of the city's hidden pulse. She meticulously recorded these anomalies, noting dates, exact locations, cross-referencing them with her detailed route maps, and brief, dispassionate descriptions. She drew crude but accurate sketches of the strange markings, jotted down the exact hues of the abnormal residues. She called it her city's secret language notebook, believing that discarded things often told the truest stories of a city, tales the polished facades of its skyscrapers could never reveal. She knew, deep down, that there was a hidden narrative unfolding, a quiet discord beneath the city's vibrant rhythm. Elena also carried a small, smooth, polished river stone in the pocket of her uniform. It was perfectly oval, cool to the touch, and shimmered faintly with embedded flecks of mica. It was a gift from her grandmother, who had passed away years ago, leaving Elena with a deep appreciation for the wisdom found in nature and the power of quiet observation. Her grandmother, a woman of simple words but profound insight, had always told Elena that the stone would help her see what others cannot. Elena often rubbed the stone between her thumb and forefinger when she was deep in thought, attributing it to a general sense of intuition, a quiet comfort that helped her focus. The omniscient narrator could perceive the subtle, almost imperceptible warmth that emanated from the stone when Elena's observations reached a critical mass, a faint pulse that connected her to the very fabric of the city's hidden energies. It was more than a mere trinket. It was a silent amplifier of her innate sensitivity, a silent witness to the growing disquiet she alone perceived. The past few weeks had seen an escalation in these unsettling patterns. The strange residues were becoming more common, the odd animal bones more prevalent, and the noxious odors more distinct, clinging to the air even after the garbage truck had passed. She was seeing them in areas previously untouched, creeping from the industrial periphery into the residential heart of the city. A faint, almost sickly sweetness, like decaying fruit mixed with something metallic, began to accompany some of the more unusual waste. Her meticulous notes, once a series of isolated data points, were slowly, inexorably forming a terrifying mosaic. They weren't just random occurrences. They formed a growing pattern of deeply unsettling, though currently inexplicable, anomalies, a dark undercurrent slowly rising to the surface. Elena, the quiet, observant sanitation worker, was unknowingly on the precipice of a discovery that would soon shatter the calm of Viridian City and challenge the very foundation of its complacent existence. Her ordinary world, a rhythm of trash and silent observation, was about to be profoundly disrupted. Councilman Alistair Thorne, a man whose ambition was as polished and gleaming as the brass plaques adorning his City Hall office, viewed the world through a meticulously curated lens. In his 50s, with a perpetual air of elegant impatience, he was a master of political maneuvering, a connoisseur of public image, his internal thoughts, often a cacophony of self-congratulation and strategic calculations, rarely lingered on the mundane. He held a deep-seated contempt for low-level city workers, seeing them as faceless cogs in a machine, necessary but utterly beneath his notice. To him, common problems were just that common and therefore insignificant, unworthy of his attention unless they threatened his carefully constructed facade of competence. He valued grand pronouncements, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and soaring approval ratings far more than the nitty-gritty realities of urban life, viewing sanitation as a mere background hum, a necessary but undignified service that kept the city looking pretty for his benefactors and constituents. His focus was always on the horizon, on the next promotion, the next power play, the next opportunity to solidify his legacy as a visionary leader. Elena, meanwhile, continued her silent vigil, her observations becoming increasingly alarming. The subtle shifts she had noted in her anomaly notebook escalated into undeniable patterns. The peculiar greenish-brown residue, once an isolated curiosity, now appeared with unnerving frequency in bins across multiple districts, often accompanied by that sickly sweet, metallic odor. The strange animal bones, initially perplexing, began to hint at something far more sinister than mere household waste. She even found discarded, fragmented medical masks and gloves in residential bins, items that should have been disposed of by licensed facilities. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to connect, forming a picture of growing dread. Then, one crisp Tuesday morning, as the city began to shake off the remnants of night, Elena found herself on her route through the Meadowbrook district, an older, tree-lined neighborhood that bordered one of Viridian City's sprawling industrial parks. This area, largely comprised of modest homes and small, aging businesses, was usually quiet, its waste streams predictable. But today, a profound sense of unease settled over Elena as she approached a cluster of overflowing public dumpsters near a disused warehouse. The air here was heavy with that sickening sweetness, intensified, almost palpable, and then she saw them. Huddled near the base of the overflowing dumpster, their feathers ruffled and their movements erratic, was a cluster of visibly sick, disoriented pigeons. Their eyes were glazed, their wings twitched unnaturally, and they struggled to maintain balance, occasionally collapsing into small, trembling heaps. One bird, larger than the rest, lay motionless, its usually vibrant plumage dulled and lifeless. Elena's heart seized. She loved the urban wildlife, often leaving out small bowls of water for the stray cats and birds on her route. This was more than just a cluster of sick animals. It was a profound, personal blow. The sight filled her with a deep, chilling sense of dread, a primal warning that something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. This wasn't just a pattern in refuse. This was a living manifestation of the insidious threat she had been meticulously tracking. Her quiet world, once defined by predictable rhythms, was suddenly pierced by the undeniable urgency of impending crisis. The image of the struggling birds haunted Elena throughout the rest of her shift. That evening, back in her modest apartment, she spread her route maps across her kitchen table, meticulously cross-referencing them with her anomaly notebook. The locations of the unusual waste, the strange odors, and now the sick animals, formed a frighteningly coherent cluster. It was like a constellation of dark stars, each point indicating a growing, unseen danger. She felt a profound sense of civic duty, a quiet but insistent voice within her urging her to act. This was no longer just about observations, it was about public safety, about the well-being of the city she served. She knew, deep down, that her anomaly report had to be formalized. With a methodical precision that belied her rising anxiety, she spent hours compiling her notes. She transferred her handwritten observations into a concise, typewritten document. She cross-referenced her locations with public city maps, pinpointing precise addresses and even coordinates. She attached the crude but accurate photos she had taken on her old, trusty flip phone images of the strange residues, the peculiar bones, the disoriented birds. Her report was thorough, factual, dispassionate in its presentation, yet brimming with the silent urgency of her own growing alarm. She detailed the unusual biological waste, the strange markings on packaging, the odd colorations in stagnant water, and now, the inexplicable animal illness. She laid out the increasing frequency, the expanding geographical spread, and the peculiar consistency of the anomalies. She was hesitant. Of course, the thought of submitting such a report, from her position as a sanitation worker to the lofty echelons of City Hall, filled her with a familiar trepidation. She knew how she was perceived invisible, a part of the city's background noise. The risk of being dismissed, ridiculed, or worse, of being seen as an alarmist, was significant. But the image of those sick birds, the sickly sweet odor that now seemed to linger in her mind, outweighed her caution, her intuition, amplified by the increasing anomalies and the constant, subtle warmth of the polished stone in her pocket, screamed that something was deeply wrong, far beyond the scope of routine public health concerns. She had to try. This was no longer just a hunch. It was an undeniable, terrifying reality that she, and she alone, seemed to truly perceive. The next morning, Elena carefully placed her meticulously compiled anomaly report unusual waste and environmental indicators in a sealed envelope, addressed to the city's Public Health and Environmental Services Department. She personally delivered it to the main reception at City Hall, a place usually bustling with citizens and officials, but to her, a monument to the bureaucracy that often overlooked the ground-level realities she inhabited. She felt a small, almost imperceptible surge of hope. She had done her part. She had raised the alarm. The report, as fate would have it, landed directly on Councilman Alastair Thorne's desk. He was, after all, the chairman of the Public Health and Environmental Services Committee, a position he leveraged primarily for photo opportunities and to ensure that no minor civic issue would derail his larger political ambitions. When his assistant, a harried young woman named Brenda, placed the thick envelope before him, Thorne merely glanced at the sender's name, Elena Rodriguez, Sanitation Department. His perfectly manicured lip curled in a subtle sneer. A sanitation worker, he thought, a wave of profound disdain washing over him. Reporting on anomalies. What utter nonsense. Probably just trying to get a commendation or, worse, some kind of sick leave. He dismissed it without even opening the envelope. He barked at Brenda. "Brenda, please. What is this another crackpot theory from the city's underbelly? Just file it under miscellaneous curiosities and send a polite boilerplate dismissal. Something about appreciating her vigilance but assuring her all city systems are operating optimally. Don't even bother to read it. My time is far too valuable for this kind of refuse." His dismissive tone was laced with a palpable contempt. The omniscient narrator could see into Thorne's mind his deep-seated class prejudice, his profound arrogance, and his blind belief that anyone below his perceived social standing could offer no valuable insight. He genuinely believed that anything coming from a sanitation worker would be uneducated, sensationalist, or simply beneath his professional purview. Her job title, in his mind, was an automatic disqualifier for any valuable, intelligent, or urgent information. He did not, for a second, entertain the possibility that a person in her position could possess crucial knowledge. The impersonal, dismissive letter arrived at Elena's small apartment 3 days later. It was precisely as Thorne had instructed, polite, bureaucratic, and utterly devoid of any real acknowledgement of her urgent findings. It stated, in clipped, formal language, that all city systems were thoroughly monitored and deemed fully operational, and that her concerns, while noted, did not indicate any immediate threat to public health. The words, so casually dismissive, struck Elena like a physical blow. She crumpled the letter in her hand, her knuckles white. This official dismissal, rooted in Councilman Thorne's arrogance and class prejudice, became Elena's undeniable point of no return. The initial fear of being dismissed, which she had pushed aside, now solidified into a quiet, simmering determination. Her intuition, the unwavering certainty that she was right, burned brighter than ever. She realized, with a chilling clarity, that the official channels, designed to protect the public, were clogged by indifference, complacency, and the profound condescension of men like Thorne. The city, unknowingly, was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the very people in power, blinded by their own self-importance, were pushing it closer. She understood that her fight was not just against a looming environmental disaster, but against a system that refused to see the truth when it came from an unexpected source. She could not, would not, simply let this go. The weight of responsibility settled squarely on her shoulders. She was the only one who truly saw the impending danger, and now, she knew. She was the only one who could truly fight it. Her journey had irrevocably changed course, from a meticulous observer to a reluctant but determined guardian of Viridian City. The official dismissal letter lay crumpled on Elena's kitchen table, a stark symbol of the city's indifference. Her initial frustration, a dull ache beneath her ribs, began to morph into a quiet, simmering resolve. Her intuition, the unwavering certainty that something deeply insidious was unfolding beneath Viridian City's glittering surface, pulsed with an almost physical urgency. She found herself obsessively reviewing her city's secret language notebook, cross-referencing locations, comparing patterns. Her mind a relentless engine of observation and analysis. She knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was right. But how could an invisible sanitation worker, dismissed by those in power, convince an entire city that it was sitting on a ticking biological time bomb? The thought was daunting, almost overwhelming, but the image of those trembling, disoriented pigeons spurred her forward. She felt a deep, personal responsibility to act, to push beyond the walls of bureaucratic apathy. Her internal conflict was a constant companion. One part of her yearned for the quiet anonymity of her old routine, the simple satisfaction of a job well done, unnoticed. The other, however, felt a growing, insistent pull towards action, a burgeoning defiance against the injustice of being unheard, of seeing a threat so clearly and being powerless to stop it through conventional means. It was as if the city itself, in its vast, silent language of discarded waste, was screaming a warning only she could translate. The smooth, polished stone in her pocket, a constant comfort, seemed to vibrate with a subtle, insistent energy, urging her to find a way to make her voice heard. She knew she couldn't go back to Councilman Thorne. His dismissiveness had been absolute, a concrete barrier built from his own arrogance. She needed a different path, an unconventional ally, someone who might be open to seeing the world through a different lens. As she worked her roots, she started quietly asking around, casually listening to conversations at the city depot, picking up whispers from other workers. She heard vague rumors of Dr. Anya Sharma, an epidemiologist at the Viridian City University, a brilliant but often struggling researcher known for her unorthodox approach. Dr. Sharma, the whispers went, believed in looking beyond traditional indicators, venturing into the less conventional realms of environmental data to find links to disease outbreaks. She was often dismissed by the more conservative scientific establishment, who viewed her focus on unorthodox data sources as unscientific. This was precisely the kind of mind Elena needed. Dr. Sharma, Elena learned, was quietly seeking funding for a new research project on urban environmental health, facing skepticism from the university board who preferred more traditional, grant-friendly research. She was, Elena intuited, a kindred spirit in her willingness to look beyond the obvious. One humid afternoon, after her shift, Elena found herself standing outside the imposing, ivy-covered brick buildings of the university's School of Public Health. Her heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and resolve. She clutched her anomaly notebook, its worn cover a testament to her dedication. Dr. Sharma's office was tucked away in a quiet corner of the oldest wing, far from the gleaming modern labs. Elena knocked. A soft, almost hesitant sound. Dr. Sharma, a woman in her early 40s with intelligent, tired eyes framed by thick-rimmed glasses, looked up from a stack of grant applications. She was a woman driven by a genuine passion for public health, but also weighed down by the constant struggle for funding and recognition. When she saw Elena, a sanitation worker in her uniform, she initially looked surprised. Then a hint of polite skepticism crossed her face. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cautious. Elena took a deep breath. "My name is Elena Rodriguez. I work for the city sanitation department. I have something I believe you need to see." She didn't boast, didn't exaggerate. She simply opened her notebook and laid it on the desk. Dr. Sharma, out of professional courtesy, leaned forward. Her eyebrows, initially arched in mild amusement, slowly lowered as she flipped through the pages. Her expression shifted from polite curiosity to mild intrigue, then to genuine astonishment. Elena, in her quiet, factual manner, began to explain her observations, her voice calm and dispassionate as she described the strange residues, the peculiar animal bones, the sickeningly sweet odor, and the increasingly frequent appearance of specific, anomalous medical waste. She showed Dr. Sharma the crude but accurate drawings, the precise timestamps, the meticulously mapped locations. She explained how the patterns were no longer isolated incidents, but formed a growing, cohesive narrative of environmental contamination. "I've been tracking this for months, Doctor," Elena explained, pointing to a cluster of coordinates on her map. "It started small, in the industrial zones, but now it's spreading into residential areas, particularly the lower docks and Meadowbrook. And lately," her voice dropped, "I've been finding discarded animal remains exhibiting very unusual signs of illness in those same areas. Pigeons, mostly, some rats." She didn't just present the data. She articulated the connections, the inferences she had drawn from her unique vantage point, her understanding of the city's hidden infrastructure, its drainage systems, its unofficial waste disposal routes. The subtle currents that carried pollutants was unparalleled. She spoke with the quiet authority of someone who intimately knew the city's underbelly. As Elena spoke, her hand instinctively rubbed the polished stone in her pocket, its subtle warmth a reassuring pulse against her palm. The omniscient narrator could perceive the stone's faint vibration, a tiny, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to amplify Elena's clarity, subtly guiding her to articulate the most pertinent details. Dr. Sharma, a brilliant scientific mind, was utterly captivated. She had spent years grappling with the frustrations of limited data, of relying on official reports that often missed the subtle, ground-level indicators of public health crises. Elena's meticulous notebook was a goldmine of precisely the kind of overlooked environmental data that her own research had been trying to pinpoint. She saw the undeniable logic, the chilling coherence of Elena's garbage data. "These aren't just anomalies, Ms. Rodriguez," Dr. Sharma murmured, her eyes wide with a dawning realization. "These are epidemiological indicators, environmental epidemiology in its purest, rawest form. You've been doing field research, essentially, without even realizing it." She recognized the rare, almost intuitive talent in Elena, the ability to discern patterns and connections where others saw only refuse. Dr. Sharma, initially skeptical of a sanitation worker's report, was now utterly astonished by Elena's detailed, almost scientific records. She realized Elena possessed a unique observational skill that far surpassed any formal training. Only Dr. Sharma truly witnessed the full scope of Elena's meticulous data and her uncanny ability to connect seemingly disparate observations. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that Elena's unorthodox data was not only valid but potentially invaluable. Meanwhile, news travels fast, even in the bureaucratic halls of City Hall. Councilman Alistair Thorne, ensconced in his opulent office, soon learned that that sanitation worker was now bothering a university researcher. Dr. Anya Sharma, a known proponent of fringe science. Thorne felt a surge of indignation. His carefully constructed sense of order threatened. This is preposterous, he fumed internally. That woman is persistent to the point of being a public nuisance. And Dr. Sharma. She's always grasping at straws to get funding for her dubious projects. He saw their collaboration as a direct challenge to his authority, a nuisance that needed to be squashed. His internal monologue was a cascade of contempt and calculation. If this low-level worker and this fringe doctor somehow manage to prove I overlooked something, my career is over. My reputation, my political trajectory, all ruined by a garbage collector and a renegade academic. I must nip this in the bud. Immediately. He feared that any acknowledgement of their findings, even if ultimately disproven, would cast a shadow of doubt on his competence and his initial dismissal of Elena's report. He valued his carefully cultivated image above all else. Thorne, a master of backroom politics, subtly began to pull strings. He discreetly contacted members of the university board, influential figures whom he had previously charmed with promises of future city contracts. He casually mentioned Dr. Sharma's unreliable research, hinting that her unorthodox methods might be attracting unwanted attention and potentially jeopardizing the university's reputation. He suggested that cutting off her limited university funding might be a prudent step to ensure academic rigor. He also contacted his cronies in the local media, selectively leaking snippets of information, painting Elena as a paranoid sanitation worker with delusions of grandeur, and Dr. Sharma as an unreliable, desperate academic clinging to sensationalist theories for attention. The local tabloid, always eager for a juicy, sensationalist story, ran a small, snarky piece titled, "Garbage Collector and Fringe. Doc Team Up Our City Hall's Bins Hiding Aliens." It was a subtle, insidious campaign designed to discredit them both, to undermine their credibility before they could even utter another word. Elena and Dr. Sharma, despite the mounting evidence, found themselves battling not just a potential health crisis, but a concerted effort to silence them. The scientific community, swayed by Thorne's quiet influence, grew more skeptical of Dr. Sharma's claims. Elena, the invisible worker, once again found herself invisible, her urgent warnings drowned out by the noise of dismissive laughter and bureaucratic disdain. Yet, this antagonism, this calculated effort to undermine them, only solidified their resolve. They knew they were on the right track. The subtle vibration of Elena's stone, almost imperceptible to her, now pulsed with a more insistent warmth, echoing the urgency that was starting to ripple through the city's undercurrents. The initial confrontation had not broken them. It had merely hardened their determination. The seeds of epidemic were silently taking root. And soon, Viridian City would be forced to acknowledge the truth, whether it wanted to or not. The whispers that had started in the lower docks district of Viridian City were no longer confined to hushed tones in dimly lit alleys. They had erupted into a cacophony of fear, a rising tide of panic that swept through the city like a wildfire. The localized animal illnesses Elena had observed transitioned, with horrifying swiftness, to human cases. What began as isolated incidents of rare, virulent disease, marked by the same unusual symptoms Elena had meticulously catalogued: extreme fatigue, discolored skin lesions, and a debilitating, almost catatonic state, quickly escalated into a rapidly spreading epidemic. The city's public health system, initially complacent under Councilman Thorne's influence, was now buckling under the immense pressure. Hospitals, once symbols of healing, became overwhelmed bastions of chaos, their emergency rooms spilling into hallways, their staff stretched to breaking point. Viridian City, usually a beacon of urban efficiency, teetered precariously on the brink of complete collapse, a city paralyzed by an unseen enemy. Councilman Thorne, though outwardly composed for the cameras, was internally a maelstrom of barely contained terror. His carefully constructed facade of control began to crack, revealing the terrified politician beneath. He maintained a public posture of calm, insisting on following established, but demonstrably ineffective, protocols. he continued to deliberately ignore Elena and Dr. Sharma's increasingly urgent pleas, convinced that acknowledging their insights would expose his initial negligence and cost him his career. His internal thoughts were a terrifying mix of fear for his own future and a desperate, clinging need to maintain his authority, even at the cost of public safety. He blamed the crisis on unforeseen circumstances and public noncompliance, diverting attention from his own colossal failures, desperate to find anyone but himself to blame. He even started privately floating the idea of mandatory quarantines in the poorer districts, a blatant attempt to confine the problem and the blame to the areas he held in disdain. The symbolic arena for this unfolding catastrophe was the city's main Department of Public Health Command Center, located deep within the imposing granite edifice of City Hall. This was where decisions were made, where power resided, and where Elena's initial, crucial report had been so casually dismissed. The room, usually a sterile, efficient space, was now a maelstrom of frantic activity, illuminated by the cold glow of multiple projection screens displaying grim statistics, rising infection rates, dwindling medical supplies, exhausted personnel. It was the very heart of the bureaucratic indifference and systemic arrogance Elena had faced, now brought low by its own hubris. Dr. Anya Sharma, pale with exhaustion but driven by grim determination, fought tirelessly to make their voices heard. She tried to present their joint findings, Elena's meticulously compiled data linking the anomalous waste to the specific symptoms, to the city's overwhelmed health officials. "The pattern is undeniable," she pleaded with Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to the councilman, but a key figure in the city's health response, the exhausted head of the public health department, his face etched with despair. Ms. Rodriguez's observations give us the specific source, the entry points into the city's infrastructure, but the officials, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the pandemic and conditioned by years of top-down command, were still skeptical of unconventional data sources, especially those from a sanitation worker. Dr. Eris Thorne, though a good man, was drowning in the crisis, unable to fully grasp the unconventional solution staring him in the face. Councilman Alistair Thorne, a pervasive and insidious presence, actively sabotaged their efforts. He circulated whispers that Dr. Sharma was unstable and grasping at straws, using his influence to block their access to key decision-makers. He publicly scoffed at Elena as an unqualified, alarmist sanitation worker, scoffing at the notion that garbage could hold the key to stopping a global pandemic. His political weight pressed down, a heavy blanket stifling any deviation from official, but failing, protocols. Elena felt an immense sense of isolation, a chilling realization that she was a lone voice, armed only with her truth, against a tide of bureaucracy, arrogance, and escalating panic. She was the one who saw the subtle, almost invisible pathways of the disease, the overlooked capillaries of the city's refuse system that were now its fatal vulnerabilities. She knew the secret language of the city's underbelly, but no one in power would listen. The time pressure intensified with each passing hour. News channels broadcast harrowing reports of overfilled morgues and city blocks under forced quarantine. A prominent media figure, usually measured and calm, issued a dire public warning. "Experts are estimating we have less than 48 hours to find the primary source of this contagion and contain it, or Viridian City will be utterly overwhelmed, and this crisis will spread uncontrollably across the nation." The deadline was public, dire, and suffocating. Panic threatened to descend into anarchy. The city's mayor issued an urgent appeal for any and all information, a desperate, last-ditch plea that was almost lost in the din. Meanwhile, a deeply conflicted individual, Arthur Jenkins, a junior epidemiologist who worked closely with Dr. Eris Thorne, had stumbled upon a cryptic note left by a former colleague. This note, hastily scribbled, referred to an old contamination pattern in sanitation records dismissed by Thorne councilmen, and included a date and a vague reference to unusual organic sludge. Jenkins was initially hesitant, knowing Councilman Thorne's power and his own precarious position. He was a Type B character, one of the misunderstood, capable of good but too intimidated to act. He had been present in the room when Elena's report had been so casually dismissed, and he recalled the dismissive sneer on Councilman Thorne's face. Now, seeing the escalating crisis, a seed of doubt began to sprout in his mind. He observed Elena and Dr. Sharma's desperate attempts to be heard, and a flicker of recognition. A growing sense of unease began to stir within him. He started to secretly cross-reference official epidemiological data with the vague information from his colleague's note, finding disturbing parallels. His conscience gnawed at him, a silent battle between fear and duty. The climax was now imminent. The city's top scientific minds were stumped, following traditional epidemiological models that yielded no clear answers for the unique transmission patterns of this contagion. They searched for a patient zero, a single source. But the disease appeared to be sprouting in multiple, seemingly disconnected locations. They were looking at the trees, but missing the forest, the vast, interconnected, underground network of urban waste. Elena, standing by Dr. Sharma in the bustling, desperate command center, felt the polished stone in her pocket growing warm, almost hot, against her skin. It vibrated with a frantic urgency, mirroring the turmoil in her own mind. She knew the answer lay in her notebook, in the discarded refuse, in the invisible pathways of the city's underbelly. But how to make them see, how to force them to look at the garbage that held the key to their salvation? The weight of the city, now broken and desperate, rested squarely on her shoulders, the fate of millions hanging in the balance. A desperate cry in the face of bureaucratic blindness. The ultimate test was not just for Elena, but for Viridian City itself. Could it humble itself enough to listen to the silent truth from its most overlooked citizens, before it was too late? The air in the Public Health Command Center in City Hall was thick with the scent of antiseptic, stale coffee, and the suffocating odor of despair. Screens glowed ominously, displaying an ever-increasing cascade of grim statistics: hospital beds at 150% capacity, emergency services overwhelmed, and the virus's infection rate spiking beyond any projections. The city was a wounded beast, thrashing in its death throes. Dr. Aris Thorne, the head of public health, looked utterly defeated, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. Official protocols had not just failed, they had exacerbated the crisis, leaving the city defenseless. Councilman Alistair Thorne, despite the mounting catastrophe, remained rigidly composed, a performance of authority he desperately clung to. He paced near the main projection screen, his voice a strained calm as he dictated futile orders into a headset. Internally, however, he was a trembling mess. His terror overshadowed only by his absolute refusal to admit his catastrophic error. He saw the city's collapse not as a humanitarian crisis, but as the potential end of his political career. Dr. Anya Sharma, pushing through sheer exhaustion, made one final, desperate plea to Dr. Aris Thorne. "We have the data. Doctor, we have the source. Just listen to us." She pointed frantically to Elena's worn anomaly notebook, which lay open on a nearby table, its pages a testament to months of unseen dedication. Elena has tracked the initial spread, the patterns, the exact locations of the unique waste linked to the virus. This isn't random. It's a direct environmental pathway. Councilman Alistair Thorne, overhearing her, spun around, his eyes flashing with a desperate, venomous anger. "This is preposterous," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the frantic hum of the room. "Are you still peddling this nonsense, Dr. Sharma, and bringing that sanitation worker into a strategic command center? This is not the time for alarmist, unqualified speculation." He strode purposefully towards the table, his hand outstretched, intent on seizing the notebook and silencing her. "This is irrelevant junk distracting us from real solutions." But before Alistair Thorne could even touch the notebook, Elena stepped forward. She didn't shout, didn't plead. Her voice though quiet, was filled with an undeniable conviction, cutting through the chaotic din like a surgeon's scalpel. "The city is dying because you refuse to look where the truth lay," she stated, her gaze steady, unwavering, meeting Alistair Thorne's furious eyes. She then unrolled a large, laminated city map she had spent all night preparing, spreading it across the main operations table. It was not just a map, it was a masterpiece of meticulous observation, a chilling narrative of the virus's insidious march. Color-coded dots glowed ominously, marking the precise locations of the anomalous waste discoveries. Arrows, drawn with chilling accuracy, traced the probable spread through the city's intricate sanitation and storm drain infrastructure. Timelines, precise to the hour, linked the waste patterns to the first reported human cases in each district. Her hand, steady and deliberate, pointed to a cluster of red dots in the lower docks. "It started here," she explained, her voice gaining strength. "An unusually high concentration of a specific type of organic residue, greenish-brown with metallic flecks. It appeared consistently for weeks, often mixed with illicit medical waste. Its odor, a sickly sweet decay, was unmistakable." She moved her finger across the map. From there, it followed the old stormwater overflow lines, entering the primary sanitation system. "We began seeing early animal sickness, specifically pigeons, here and here." She indicated 2 more clusters of dots, before the first human cases emerged in those exact same neighborhoods. Elena then explained, with chilling precision, the exact type of biological contaminant she believed they were dealing with, its properties, and its most likely source. A variant of a highly resistant airborne fungal spore, likely engineered, not natural. Its unique resistance profile and rapid mutation rate suggest it's not from a natural source, and its prevalence in medical waste suggests a human source. She pointed to a series of specific, almost invisible markings she'd seen on discarded packaging, markings that would have been meaningless to anyone else. "These symbols," she articulated, "I've seen them on waste from a specific, unregistered laboratory, operating discreetly outside official purview, an illicit medical research group. They're trying to hide it in plain sight, using the city's waste system as their disposal." This was something only a sanitation worker, deeply familiar with discarded waste patterns and the city's illicit undercurrents, could have identified. She described the subtle, telltale signs in the refuse, details that had remained invisible to every other expert in the room. As she spoke, the smooth, polished stone in her pocket pulsed with an intense, almost frantic warmth, a subtle guiding hand amplifying her clarity and conviction. The Nin-Tho breath-holding moment. Just as Elena pinpointed the likely source, an old, abandoned pharmaceutical factory connected to a disused industrial drain that fed directly into the public waste system in the hardest-hit districts, Councilman Alistair Thorne roared, "She's a garbage collector. She knows nothing about epidemiology. This is a stunt. She's lying. This is absurd." He lunged forward, trying to physically seize the map, to silence her, to shatter her moment of undeniable truth. He was desperate, his political life flashing before his eyes. "Get her out of here now!" he shrieked, his composure finally breaking. But as his hand reached for the map, a piercing, insistent alarm blared from the main tracking board. A new, terrifying cluster of severe, critical cases had just appeared, flashing red, directly correlating with the abandoned factory and the disused industrial drain that Elena had just pinpointed as the source. It was undeniable. The head of public health, Dr. Eris Thorne, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrifying realization, stared from Elena's map to the tracking board, the connection blindingly clear. His face, moments ago etched with despair, transformed into one of profound shock, then a dawning, terrible understanding. "Stop, Doctor." Eris Thorne's voice, usually calm and composed, exploded with a raw, guttural power that silenced Alistair Thorne mid-lunge. "Her report, it's all here. The source is right here. He pointed to the newly highlighted cluster on the board, then to the precise spot Elena had marked on her map. That's the old industrial drain from the abandoned East Side facility. It feeds directly into the public waste system in those exact districts she's been tracking. The audience reaction. The command center, a hub of controlled chaos, erupted into an astonished, almost spiritual silence. The overwhelmed doctors, the frantic city planners, the exhausted epidemiologists, the weary public health officials, their faces, once etched with skepticism and disdain for Elena, transformed in a wave. First, profound astonishment, then a ripple of dawning understanding, then unreserved relief, and finally, a surge of awe and unadulterated admiration. They saw the undeniable truth, the chilling elegance of her solution. A quiet data technician, who had worked tirelessly but fruitlessly on the crisis, suddenly gasped, a sound of pure wonder. She's right. The flow patterns match. The original point of discharge has been active for weeks, but it's an old, unregistered line. It's exactly what's causing the multiple, disconnected outbreaks. Commands were barked, radios crackled, and teams were dispatched instantly to the abandoned factory and the specific drain Elena had identified. Within minutes, preliminary reports came back the abandoned facility indeed housed an illicit, crude laboratory, its waste flowing directly into the city's system, and the fungal spores were present in overwhelming concentrations. A targeted containment effort was launched, halting the spread. The city had been saved. Councilman Alastair Thorne stood frozen, his hands still suspended in the air where he had tried to grab the map. His face, moments ago twisted with fury, drained of all color, becoming a mottled, ashen mask of utter disbelief and profound shame. His jaw hung slack, the cruel words of dismissal dying on his lips. His meticulously constructed political career, his carefully cultivated image, his very authority, crumbled into nothingness, exposed as a hollow sham built on arrogance and neglect. The dramatic irony was complete. Viridian City, on the precipice of ruin, had been saved by the very report he had so casually, so contemptuously, dismissed. Elena, the invisible sanitation worker, the underdog he had deemed insignificant, had triumphed, her overlooked observations becoming the city's undeniable salvation. A single, powerful tear rolled down Dr. Aris Thorne's cheek, a silent testament to the raw, profound relief that washed over the room. A collective sigh of a city brought back from the brink by the most unexpected of heroes. The thunderous applause that had erupted in the command center for Elena slowly subsided, replaced by a hum of activity, no longer frantic, but purposeful. The immediate threat, the source of the contagion, had been identified and swiftly contained. Viridian City, though scarred, began its slow, arduous journey towards recovery. The shift in atmosphere was palpable, a collective sigh of relief emanating from the very walls of City Hall. For Councilman Alastair Thorne, however, the aftermath was a swift and brutal descent. His composure, shattered during Elena's presentation, gave way to a desperate, unhinged fury. He was immediately stripped of his authority, escorted from the command center by stony-faced security personnel. The public outrage, once a simmering undercurrent, now erupted into a torrential downpour. Media outlets, once placidly accepting his narrative, now dissected his every dismissive word, every arrogant gesture, the damning revelations of his negligence, amplified by Elena's undeniable vindication, painted him as the arrogant, callous official who had nearly doomed an entire city. His political career, the carefully constructed edifice of his ambition, didn't just end, it imploded. The omniscient narrator could perceive the raw, agonizing torment that consumed Alastair Thorne. His internal landscape was a wasteland of bitter regret and searing shame. He, who had always viewed himself as untouchable, now faced the ultimate public humiliation. He lost not only his coveted position and his meticulously cultivated reputation, but also the respect of his peers, his family, and, perhaps most damningly, himself. He faced a swift and merciless investigation for gross negligence, with whispers of criminal charges now circulating. The very people he had disdained, the common citizens of Viridian City, now held his fate in their hands. Their collective condemnation a far more potent punishment than any legal verdict. He was a type A villain, motivated by insatiable greed and ego, and his downfall was a stark, public reckoning, a fitting consequence for his profound hubris and disregard for human life. He realized, with a sickening clarity, that his contempt for ordinary people, for the very fabric of the city he supposedly served, had ultimately cost him everything. As Alistair Thorne's world crumbled, Elena's was quietly rebuilt, piece by painstaking piece. The media, having initially mocked her, now championed her as the silent savior of Viridian City, the sanitation hero, and the woman who heard the city's whispers. She received widespread public recognition, not just from the grateful citizens, but from scientific communities and environmental organizations across the globe. Awards, commendations, and heartfelt letters poured in, each a testament to her quiet dedication and extraordinary insight. The city, recognizing the profound error of its ways, acted swiftly to rectify its structural oversights. Elena was offered a newly created, highly prestigious position as the Director of Urban Biosurveillance for Viridian City. This wasn't merely a promotion, it was a profound validation of her unique talent, a recognition that the city needed her specific way of seeing the world. The role came with significant funding, a dedicated team of scientists and urban planners, and the unprecedented authority to implement citywide environmental monitoring programs that integrated data from all levels of civic service, especially the frontline workers. This was an opportunity not just for her personal growth, but for systemic change, a chance to transform how Viridian City understood and protected itself. Dr. Anya Sharma, now a celebrated figure in the scientific community, was given full funding for her research. Her unorthodox approaches now lauded as visionary. She became a key collaborator with Elena, leading the scientific arm of Elena's new department. Their partnership a powerful synergy of intuition and empirical rigor. Their combined efforts revolutionized urban health monitoring, creating a model for cities worldwide. A few weeks after the crisis had subsided, and the city began to breathe again, Elena found a rare moment of quiet. She sat with Dr. Sharma in her new office at City Hall. It was a spacious, well-equipped room, a stark contrast to the cramped cab of her garbage truck. Yet Elena felt no less grounded. The window overlooked a bustling street, now filled with people moving freely, safely. The city hummed with a renewed, albeit subdued, vitality. Elena, her gaze thoughtful, gently rubbed the smooth, polished riverstone in her pocket, its familiar comfort a steady presence. "I just saw things, Dr. Sharma," she said quietly, her voice still carrying the undertone of her inherent humility. Things others looked past, the discarded packaging, the changes in the water, the sick birds, they were all signals. Dr. Sharma smiled warmly, her tired eyes reflecting a deep respect. "No, Elena, you didn't just see, you listened. You valued the subtle stories in the discard pile, the hidden narratives of the city. That's a rare gift. Your intuition, your meticulousness, your profound respect for the invisible parts of the city, its waste, its forgotten corners, its most vulnerable, that's what saved us all. You saw the city as a living organism, not just concrete and steel." She leaned forward slightly. Most people ignore what's right in front of them if it's unpleasant or doesn't fit their preconceived notions. You embraced it. You found truth in the refuse. Elena reflected on her journey, the years of quiet observation, the dismissal, the terrifying escalation, and the profound vindication. She recognized that her seemingly overlooked work, her unique vantage point from the city's underbelly, had given her an unparalleled perspective, a deeper understanding of the city's hidden vulnerabilities and its incredible resilience. The quiet, observant sanitation worker had become a guardian, a visionary. The resolution was not just about the city's recovery. It was about Elena's profound transformation, from invisible to indispensable, from unheard to the most trusted voice in Viridian City's public health. The calm that settled over her was not merely the absence of crisis, but the deep, satisfying peace that comes from a life lived with purpose, where profound truth is found in the most unexpected places. 5 years later, Viridian City no longer bore the visible scars of the Great Pandemic. Its once bustling streets hummed with a renewed, vibrant energy, and its skyline gleamed under a clean, hopeful sky. At the heart of this revitalization, a testament to resilience and foresight, stood the gleaming, state-of-the-art Viridian City Urban Biosurveillance Department. It was a marvel of modern public health, a sprawling complex that seamlessly integrated advanced laboratories, data analysis centers, and community outreach hubs. And at its helm, a globally recognized figure of quiet authority and profound wisdom, was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now in her early 40s. Elena moved through the department with an innate grace, her deep-set eyes still holding that meticulous intensity, but now softened by years of understanding, fulfillment, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing her vision come to life. She was no longer just the sanitation hero. She was a renowned expert in urban epidemiology and environmental health, a celebrated conservationist whose work profoundly impacted urban planning and public health policies across the globe. Her once unorthodox methods, born from years of listening to the whispers of the city's discarded secrets, were now standard practice, studied and replicated in universities and municipalities worldwide. She lectured at international conferences, advised governments on sustainable urban infrastructure, and published groundbreaking research on zoonotic disease prevention and community-based health monitoring. Her unique perspective, a blend of meticulous scientific rigor and an intuitive understanding of the interconnectedness of urban ecosystems, allowed her to approach complex problems with a holistic vision that often eluded traditional experts. Her accent, a subtle blend of her humble origins and the articulate clarity she had gained through necessity, was now celebrated as a mark of her profound, ground-level understanding, a living embodiment of her ability to bridge the gap between empirical science and intuitive wisdom. She had truly become a bridge between the unseen and the seen, between the marginalized and the powerful. Elena never forgot the initial skepticism, the sneers of dismissal, nor the profound importance of those who had believed in her. She particularly remembered the quiet courage of Dr. Anya Sharma, who now served as her indispensable chief scientific officer, their partnership a harmonious blend of mutual respect and shared purpose. More importantly, she remembered the countless voiceless essential workers who held the true pulse of the city in their hands, yet remained largely invisible. She also remembered the insidious nature of prejudice, how it blinded those in power to the truth. Leveraging her significant influence and a substantial portion of the newly established Viridian City Public Health Innovation Fund, a direct result of her efforts, Elena established the Guardians of the City Fund. This nonprofit organization was a revolutionary initiative designed to empower frontline civic workers, sanitation crews, street cleaners, public transport staff, park maintenance workers, to recognize and report environmental and health anomalies. The fund went far beyond mere training. It provided specialized workshops on early disease indicators and environmental contamination, equipping workers with portable testing kits and secure, user-friendly digital reporting tools. It established a direct, unburdened channel to the biosurveillance department, ensuring their invaluable observations were never again dismissed by bureaucratic red tape or prejudice. She championed citywide policies that elevated the status and pay of these essential workers, ensuring they were seen not just as cogs in the urban machinery, but as crucial eyes and ears of the urban environment, true sentinels of public health. Every month, Elena personally hosted intimate Listen to the City workshops for the Guardians of the City Fund participants. She'd lead them on walks through the city's diverse districts, pointing out subtle environmental cues, teaching them to identify unusual waste patterns and encouraging them to sit quietly in overlooked corners, urging them to listen to the whispers of the urban landscape. She shared stories of her own journey, of the ignored report, of the critical role her unconventional observations played in stopping the pandemic. "Your unique vantage point is your greatest strength," she would tell them, her voice resonating with gentle authority. "The city speaks to you in its own language, through its refuse, its odors, its quiet rhythms. Don't ever let anyone tell you that what you see, what you hear, what you feel, isn't real or isn't important. You are the true guardians, the first line of defense." She often brought out her old, worn anomaly notebook, its pages filled with her precise handwriting, now a revered artifact, letting the participants touch its worn cover, encouraging them to find their own symbolic anchors, their own sources of quiet strength in their crucial work. The smooth, polished Riverstone, her constant companion since childhood, now rested on her desk in her executive office, its ancient mica flecks gleaming under the soft lamp, a silent testament to her extraordinary journey and the enduring power of intuitive truth. Her influence extended far beyond Viridian City. She spearheaded global initiatives to create interconnected urban biosurveillance networks, collaborating with international health organizations to develop early warning systems for emerging pathogens. She traveled to megacities in Asia, Europe, and Africa, consulting with local governments, blending indigenous knowledge with cutting-edge science to build more resilient urban environments. She championed educational programs that fostered environmental stewardship from a young age, believing that nurturing a connection to nature, even in concrete jungles, was the foundational step for a truly sustainable future. Her impact was profound, tangible, and universally recognized, transforming countless lives and fundamentally altering how humanity viewed the symbiotic relationship between urban development and public health. One crisp autumn afternoon, 5 years after the pandemic, Elena found herself back in the Lower Docks district. The neighborhood, once neglected and suffering, had undergone a remarkable transformation under her initiatives. New community gardens bloomed where dumpsters once overflowed. Renovated housing blocks stood proudly, and a palpable sense of community revitalization permeated the air. She walked slowly, observing the children playing in a new, clean park, their laughter echoing freely. She paid a visit to the elderly woman she had helped years ago, now living comfortably in a refurbished apartment, a small, vibrant potted plant on her windowsill. The woman, recognizing Elena, offered a warm, grateful smile and a fresh-baked cookie. Later, Elena stood on a high observation deck, overlooking a revitalized Viridian City. The skyline gleamed, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. But her gaze was not on the towering glass and steel. It was drawn to the intricate network of streets below, the hidden alleys, the sparkling waterways that replaced polluted canals, the verdant green spaces that now dotted the urban landscape. She saw it not as a collection of buildings, but as a living, breathing organism, its pulse strong and healthy. She saw the network of frontline workers, their daily routines now imbued with purpose and dignity, their observations contributing to the city's ongoing well-being. She held the smooth, polished Riverstone in her hand, feeling its familiar comfort, a tangible link to her past, a quiet reminder that the most profound truths are often found in the places, and by the people, others choose to ignore. The initial dismissals, the crushing weight of being unheard, the terrifying race against time, they all seemed like distant echoes now, necessary trials that had forged her into the leader she had become. The city, now healthy and vibrant, hummed with a new life, a testament to the quiet hero who dared to look closer, to listen deeper, and to never give up on the crucial stories hidden in the discarded. She closed her eyes for a moment, and in the gentle hum of the city, she heard the whispers, clear and distinct. No longer a warning of danger, but a symphony of life, growth, and enduring hope. The silence that once defined her had transformed into a profound voice, resonating across continents, guiding humanity towards an unending second spring, one of perpetual growth, discovery, and deep-seated fulfillment, rooted in the understanding that every part of the city, every overlooked detail, every unseen hero, holds the key to its future. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment below. Share this story with those who need inspiration, or with anyone who understands the power of a voice that refuses to be silenced. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories that celebrate resilience, empathy, and the extraordinary in the everyday.